Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We are going to talk about how to combat ageism in your next job interview. We would like to welcome any new people who have decided to attend a FlexJobs webinar for the first time. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you who have been here before, we appreciate you coming back. One of the things that we really like to do as we get started, and it also allows people just an extra few seconds to log into the Big Marker room, is to pop in the chat section and let us know where you are joining from. This gets you used to navigating the Big Marker portal, as well as giving us an idea of where in the world everybody is. The chat section is a really great way to communicate with other attendees and to share your experiences. So if you find where that is right away, that's a really good thing. And before we dive into our content, I do want to cover just a couple of things. You don't have to worry about taking notes or missing anything in the presentation because we are recording it. And we will send a link to the replay, as well as any of the resources shared within the presentation. So you'll have that within a few days. That gets sent to the email address that you use to register for the webinar. So if you don't see it, you'll have to check your spam folder. Also a note about the presentation, it actually has been pre-recorded, but the Q&A section at the end is live with one of our career experts. So if you do have a question, we do encourage you to put that in the Q&A section. That is where we will prioritize what questions we answer. You'll notice a thumb next to, or a thumbs up really, icon next to all of the questions that are posted in the Q&A. So if you'd also like that question answered, please do give it a thumbs up so we can prioritize. We don't always get through all the questions that come in, but we do guarantee that you will learn something in the information that we do share and with the questions that we answer. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see what we're going to talk about today. The topics that we are going to cover in this presentation are tips for updating your interview skills. If it's been a while since you've interviewed, there maybe are some new things. Oftentimes we get asked what to do when you are overqualified for a job. So we want to talk about that. We want to talk about how you can incorporate what your career goals are into an interview, especially, if they're different than they were when you first started your career. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the importance of confidence going into a job interview in general. So we will bring that up for a few slides too. And then, of course, we'll end with our Q&A. So the first topic I want to talk about are how you can update your interview skills, and specifically what skills you need to update. So there are a few key steps that you need to start. And the first, and we'll talk about this, is to know the different types of interviews you may be asked to attend. You want to familiarize yourself with the commonly asked interview questions. You want to know what behavioral interviewing is, and we will talk about that. And of course, to update your interview skills to the maximum extent possible, you will practice, and you will also want to try, if you can, to enlist the help of family or friends to do some mock interview or role playing when you are getting ready for your interview. All right. So if it's been a while since you've interviewed for a job, don't worry. Knowing the types of interviews will help your preparation process. Of course, you may encounter an in-person interview if you are looking for a job locally. And before remote work was so prevalent, many of you, myself included, had experience with interviewing in person. A one-way video interview is also pretty common these days. This involves you answering questions that either your computer speaks to you or the questions are typed on the screen and they pop up. You will speak your answer and it is recorded, and then the interview is sort of sent or uploaded and sent to the company for the pre-screening component. These interviews are typically pretty short, maybe around 10 minutes. It's usually 3 to 5 questions. Tell me about yourself. It might be, why do you want to work here? The questions can kind of vary a little bit. There are video interviews. These are interviews that are on a video, or you turn your camera on using a technology platform, and there are different ones out there. There are still phone interviews that occur, and you might be invited to do an audio interview on Zoom, which you might dial in for, but you don't need to have your camera on, so that's an option. And finally, a panel interview is an option, and this usually comes toward the end of the interviewing process. This interview would involve you and more than one interviewer from the company. Usually it's 2 or 3 other people. And I do want to point out that many of the jobs that you will interview for today in this market will have at least 2 interviews, a pre-screen or an initial interview, and then a second interview. But many jobs often have more than 2. So that you might have a 3 interview process before a decision is made by the company. Okay, so anticipating what an interviewer will ask you will help you with your preparation and practice, right? That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So I wanted to include the most commonly asked questions in job interviews. And those questions are, tell me about yourself. What is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? Why do you want to work here? Why are you looking for a new role? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And sometimes there are some curveball questions that are seem silly, like what if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? Those types of things. We also, as a side note, have a webinar specifically that we just released this month about how to answer these questions, and we go through sample answers. And so that is something that I encourage you to attend and watch as well. But I want you to know that you do want to anticipate that these questions are a similar form of them because they are going to be asked most likely in the interview. As you're preparing, you want to think about how you want to answer. The part where people are often stumped is when thinking about where do I start? If somebody asks me to tell me about yourself, I have 20 or 30 or however many number of years of experience. How can I possibly answer this question in 1 minute or less? Good news here, the job posting that you use to apply to the job is key, and it will really help you know and understand what information you should include from your past experiences. Reread the job posting, keep it close to you, and see which key skills the company is looking for in their applicants and their eventual hire. So formulate your answers around these skills. I mentioned behavioral interviewing, and so now I do want to talk a little bit about what that is. So employers want to look to understand you on a deeper level. And so these types of questions really allow a deeper dive into some of your experiences. It gives insight on how you use your specific skills. And when you are asked a question like, tell me about yourself, or tell me about a time when, these are behavioral interview questions. And you want to frame your answers rather around this acronym: situation, task, action, and result. So that is STAR. And so what you're going to do is have several situations that you're going to describe what the task was, what the action was that you took to complete the situation or to, complete the objective. You'll share the result. And those are going to be sort of your little snippets about what you've done and what you have to offer the organization. So if somebody says, tell me about a time that you had to settle a disagreement between team members. Okay, so your situation would be a specific project, I would assume, where you were working together with other people and there was not consensus on what you were supposed to do. And so the task that you took was to possibly maybe ask some open-ended questions of each of the team members to see and really get to the bottom of where they were coming from, so that you guys could open up some more discussion that was going to be more productive and everybody could come to a consensus. And once you did this activity and you found out where everybody was coming from and the communication was ironed out, the result was you were able to finish the project on time and under budget, or something along those lines. So you're really going to give a little snippet or a peek into how you work and how you use your skills. That is how to go about behavioral interviewing. All right. So what if you are overqualified for a job? And many times when you are applying to a job later in your career, after you've already had a very successful career, if you are in that specific stage, you might be applying to jobs that you are overqualified for because you don't want to have something at the same seniority level. So if you are overqualified, you definitely need to be aware of quelling any concerns that a potential employer might have. And those concerns are things like, how long is this person going to actually stay here if I hire them? What are some of those goals that you have? Bringing a lot of experience is not bad. It's a great thing. It is one of your strengths. However, if not all of your experience is required for the role, you definitely want to make sure that the employer understands that you understand the role requirements. Because the employer might possibly be wondering, if you have all of that experience, how long are you really going to stay here? Being able to share with them what your goals are and explain and illustrate why you are interested in working in this job at this particular company will help quell those concerns. So saying something like, I'm excited about this opportunity because it allows me to use my skill set to advance the goals of the customer. I've always worked to provide an exceptional customer experience, and I believe this role will allow me to thrive in delivering that spa-like service. I also am personally connected to your company's mission of XXXXX, whatever that is, because on a personal level, I believe that XXXXX, whatever that is, to go back to the company mission. It's great to be here speaking with you, sharing my experiences and learning even more about this opportunity. Okay. So you're focusing on a key piece of the role, customer service. It's likely this person maybe was a director of customer service or director of customer success, but really diving into giving that customer experience and narrowing the scope of the role in your answer can help quell those concerns about being overqualified. All right, so confidence. Let's talk about how you can be confident going into an interview and why it's important. With any interview, this is key. Confidence is a key thing. Remember, you have been selected to be interviewed. You are a finalist for the job because the employer already sees something on your application that intrigues them, and they are already feeling like you may be a good fit for the role. If you go into the interview with the mindset of they are going to see how old I am and think I'm not right, or of course they'll be able to tell how old I am, this can really impact your confidence. You will get stuck in your head, and all of a sudden, all the really great things you bring to the table may not come across because you are stuck and worried about something that is an issue to you. You do not know if it is an issue to the employer. That's projecting. So keep your attitude positive and your positive mindset going strong. Sometimes, of course, this is easier said than done, as it does take a while to find a job. So if any of you have been in the job search for a while, we totally understand that. The data out there suggests that it is normal that a job search takes 3 to 6 months. And beyond that, there is a less than 10% chance that you will land an interview from each application. And I'm not telling you this to scare you, rather just to help you manage your expectations. Not getting an interview or not getting a job offer after an interview will and can happen for a variety of reasons. And thinking it is always because of your age is not helpful. Sometimes the job doesn't get filled. A hiring freeze goes into effect. Sometimes people are hired internally, and that is not anything that you can control. Finally, if you feel that you are not confident in the technology used to interview, spend some time getting familiar with those platforms. There are usually some free trials, like for Zoom, that you can go online and play around with before you actually have an interview. During the interview, and as you prepare and practice your answers, you want to make sure you are including the skills and keywords from the job posting that you also possess. If you remember, the job posting is key. I mentioned that earlier, but also skills like adaptability, problem solving, and communication are key in a hybrid and remote world. So for those types of jobs, you want to highlight those skills. Also, be sure you are exuding enthusiasm and energy so the employer knows you are up for the role. Pepper in your excitement about the organization throughout the interview as well. All right. And after the interview, before you finish with the interview, your last question should be something like, when can I expect to hear from you? Or when do you expect to make your decision? This will give you an idea of when you can follow up if you don't hear from them. But first, once you finish the interview, you want to be sure to write a thank you note. Sending it via email is a-okay, and you want to try to do it within 24 hours. Sometimes this is the exact thing that will differentiate you from another candidate because not everybody does this, believe it or not. And because you asked that question, when can I expect to hear from you? This gives you the runway to know when you can follow up. Mark your calendar and follow up on that day if you have not heard from them. All right. So what can you do after the webinar is over? Familiarize yourself with the types of interviews, particularly if you haven't heard of some of the interviews that were mentioned today. Write out your behavioral interview answers to questions like, tell me about a time when. We have resources for that as well. Make sure you are practicing with the technology and testing it ahead of time. And you want to go into an interview confident and ready to go because that organization and the people that are talking to you already think you bring value to what they're looking to do at their organization. All right, as promised, we will be getting to our Q&A shortly. Make sure that if you have any other questions or need any other resources, you head to the FlexJobs.com blog. There are over 4,000 articles on any topic that you can imagine in your job search. So please don't sleep on that resource there. And as a reminder, we will be sending a copy of this shortly. So you will have that and you can refer back to it as you are getting ready for your job interviews. But without any more hesitation, let's go ahead and see what questions we can answer for you today. Hi, everybody. It's Tony here to answer some questions, and we do have a good bit of time to get through some questions, so please feel free to add those to the Q&A. I see one question right now. I had to take care of a loved one. How do I respond to why I took some time off? I'll just plug the handout section here, the sample templates. If you download those, we do have more examples of how to phrase a career break than what we'll talk about here. So for the rest of you, if you want to grab that now instead of waiting for the recap, go ahead and do that. So one of the things that you want to do, and obviously you'll have marked this on your resume, right? But the next step is to talk about it in your interview. And so if they're asking you, if you've got it on your resume that you had a career break, whether it was planned or professionally active, and you indicated that you took some time off to care for a loved one, when you are in the interview, if they ask that, you would say the same thing that you put on your resume. You don't have to go into a ton of detail and share a lot of personal information about why you took some time off. I think one of the things that you can add to or consider adding to a response, as part of your response to a question like that is, I took some time off to spend some time with a loved one, and now I'm really excited to get back into doing what I really love to do in marketing or in accounting or in public relations, and, pick something from the job description or a key skill that the company needs in their next employee and layer that in to your answer. So hopefully that helps there. Let's see here. All right. I haven't worked a full-time job in 13 years and I'm 62. What kind of questions can I expect? This is a good one. So certainly we talked about a few of them. Tell me about yourself. You might get some questions like, why are you coming back to work after being out of the workforce? And so you want to, kind of really share your story about, what you've been up to, anything that you've done that's been something that's had you be professionally active. I'm also going to, in the chat, put a link for the top 30 most common interview questions and tips for answering those. And I'm going to make sure we add this to the recap. So you guys have that. I'll add that link there. So those are some things that you can expect. Also, you might want to, in terms of, I guess, being an older worker, you might get some questions about, how do you think you'll handle
a fast-paced environment, if indeed that's the type of environment that you are going to be working in or applying to work in. So I would be prepared to answer some of those questions that might be alluding to your ability to, work 40 hours a week, have energy to get through 40 hours a week, or even 20, depending on if you're applying for part-time jobs or not. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. If I don't have experience in certain systems like Salesforce, HubSpot, will training on my own through Coursera or similar be viewed as valid experience, or does the employer typically want hands-on experience in a work environment? I think that this is why upskilling can be really important. It shows initiative, and for an employer, now certainly if they've got something on the job posting that says you need Salesforce experience, specifically, they may value hands-on experience higher than a course through Coursera. However, by doing a course on Coursera or upscaling through other ways and other means to learn it, because you've recognized that it's a key component to the jobs that you are applying for, or to that particular job that you are interviewing for, I do think that employers like to see that initiative. One of the things, particularly for remote work, that employers like to see is embracing change, technology know-how, and a willingness to learn new things. And so you are showing all of that in terms of this particular example and upskilling. How far back should I go on my resume? You really only need to go back 10 to 15 years on your resume. If you have relevant experience that's older than that, usually we suggest creating an additional relevant experience section on your resume where you can put an additional position or 2 or 3, depending on what's relevant and what the rest of your resume looks like, to tell more of your career story. When you create an additional relevant experience section on your resume, you don't include the dates of employment. So it's really just highlighting some additional roles that you've had without dating yourself or creating any kind of career gaps. How do you respond to the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Yes, this is one of those that is asked quite frequently in all job interviews. As an older worker, you certainly don't want to give the impression that you're only going to be there for a few months or a year or whatever the case may be. So, if you are not, but certainly as an older worker, we might not always be wanting to grow in our career. But you could say something like, I'm really excited about this opportunity. I know that one of the things that I really want to do for the next several years is make sure that I'm contributing to an organization and a team, and using, kind of my time, talent, and treasure to contribute to a common goal. And of course, that time, talent, and treasure is something that is related to the job that you are interviewing for. I let my hair go gray after years of coloring. Should I color it to look younger? I know other ladies wonder about this too. This is a personal preference for everybody. I tend to think if you don't want to do anything that is not going to be genuine to who you are as a person, and if an organization wouldn't hire you because of the color of your hair, it might not be an organization that you want to work for anyway. So this is a personal preference. I will say that if you have a social media profile with a picture, or if you are going to be doing video interviews, you definitely want to make sure that the energy and the look that you exude shows that you are capable of getting the work done. So no matter the color of your hair, you want to look professional. Your nonverbal cues in an interview should be energetic. You should have a smile on your face. You should look as though you are in the role that you are interviewing for. That doesn't necessarily mean wearing a suit and tie, or a suit jacket. For the ladies, a suit coat, or I guess a blazer. But you do want to, exude that enthusiasm for the role. And that is independent of whatever color your hair might be. I know we get this question a lot. There's no answer that is right 100% of the time, because it is really a personal preference. It does. My understanding is that it is hard, and it's one more thing that you add to your to-do list if you do have a lot of gray hair that you color. And I know several people who have stopped coloring it because it is just really hard to keep up with. And so that's something to really think about and make the best decision for you. Most tech companies have a very casual dress code. What is the appropriate dress for an older interviewee? If you dress a bit nicer, it seems like you just end up looking stuffy. Yes, this is always a tricky one. So, what I would do if you have a specific tech company that you are interviewing with, I would look at LinkedIn profile pictures of people that already work at the company. I also would look at the website and see if there is a career page that has pictures of different staff members, and look at the dress in those pictures to help you determine what is appropriate for you to wear. Because you are right. You don't probably want to show up in a suit if, or, a really dressy, business attire for a female, if the person interviewing you is going to be in a hoodie. Now, I will say that I do still think you want to level up your dress a bit from, let's say, a hoodie to something that is a little bit elevated from there for an interview for the job. So a bit nicer, I think, versus completely 180 out from how everybody else dresses is really the goal here. And hopefully that helps. But I really do think looking at what others are wearing that work at the company or similar companies on LinkedIn profile pics and company career pages can really help you determine what decision to make there on your dress. I got laid off and went back to school for another graduate degree. Can I mention I was laid off in the interview if asked? Some people have told me not to mention I was laid off and that I left as my own choice. What do you recommend? I recommend honesty always. And so if somebody asks why you left that company, you can say that you were laid off from your role due to a company restructuring or whatever the reasoning was. And you really, ultimately, it was an opportunity for you to go back to school to earn another degree. And you really learned a lot through that process. And now you're excited about the opportunities that have presented themselves since that event that, was, hard and challenging, and you were able to move forward and work and, kind of turn it into an opportunity instead. So I always recommend honesty. I am looking for something I am well overqualified for. How do I convince a prospective employer that I won't leave for a higher paying, better fitting job? I think that the general answer to this is you want to focus more on your skills and the skill set you have that is a really great match for the job that you're applying for versus the years of experience that you have that have made you, potentially overqualified because you've been exposed to many more opportunities and projects and things like that. So focus on the key skills that are required in the job description, the key things that you would be doing, and really hone in on how you're going to be able to execute the demands of the role with that specific skill set. You also, depending on the company culture, if they have been vocal, either verbally or in writing on their website, on their work-life balance and employee flexibility and all of those types of things. You might also say, at this point in my career, I am really looking to work for an organization that also values work-life balance. I'm very, excited about what I see on your website and reading about your employees being able to volunteer or whatever it is that they're doing or that speaks to you. You can also bring that into the equation as well, saying that you feel like it would be a really good company culture fit too. So those are some suggestions there. And with that, our time is done for the day. We appreciate you being here. We are excited about the webinars that we have coming up the rest of the week. So please do join us, and we will hope to see you there. Thanks, everybody. Have a really great afternoon. Bye-bye.